So, India has just dropped a brand new rule book for the digital world. It's called the Digital Personal Data Protection Act. And trust me, it's going to completely change how your personal information is gathered, used, and, most importantly, protected. Let's get right into it and decode what this all means. Just let that number sink in for a second. We're talking about a law that impacts over 1.4 times billion people. This isn't some small regulatory tweak. It is a massive seismic shift for the second most populous country on the planet. It's basically rewriting the rules of the game between you, me, and every organization that holds our data. So the real question is, are you ready for what's coming? All right, first things first, we're going to tear down this new digital rulebook piece by piece. This is our deep dive into the absolute essentials of India's Digital Personal Data Protection Act of 2023, or as you'll hear it called, the DPDPA. Understanding this new act is really a journey. We're moving from the old way of doing things, which was often a bit of a Wild West, to a much clearer, rights-focused future. It's all about learning how to handle data responsibly, which, let's be clear, is no longer just a nice to have. It's the law. Okay, now let's get to the really good stuff. We're going to decode the very foundations of this act. What are the core ideas, the absolute bedrock principles that hold this entire thing together? At its heart, the DPDPA is basically India's new command center for all things data. It lays out really clear, non-negotiable rules for how organizations, which the law calls data fiduciaries, have to manage the personal data of individuals, who are called data principals. It sounds straightforward, right? But the impact is absolutely massive. Getting a real grip on this is kind of like a four-step process. First, we have to discover the foundational principles. Think about things like purpose limitation, which means a company can only use your data for the exact reason you gave it to them for, nothing else. Next, we navigate the new landscape, which gives people like you and me new powers, like the right to fix our data or even have it deleted. That helps us build a really solid understanding of consent, which now has to be super clear and explicit. And finally, we'll see how this all lines up with what's happening globally. And this is a really key point. India isn't just making this stuff up in a vacuum. You've got these huge global frameworks, like Europe's GDPR, that have really set the gold standard for data protection. The DPDPA is India's strategic move to get in line with these global best practices. This makes it a huge player in the worldwide conversation on data rights. And frankly, it makes doing business across borders a whole lot smoother. So we've covered the theory, but how does any of this actually work in the real world? In practice. That's what this next section is all about, taking it from the page and putting it into action. These are the moments where the rubber really meets the road. Take data breaches, for example. Under the new DDPA, if a company gets breached, they now have a strict duty to tell not only the new Data Protection Board, but also every single person who is affected. So yeah, no more sweeping these things under the rug. And what about those crazy long privacy policies filled with legal jargon? Well, those have to be clear, simple, and even available in different languages now. Now, to handle all of this, organizations need to get good at four key things. First, they need to build a data protection strategy that's actually part of their DNA, not just some poster on a wall. Second, they have to get way better at assessing risk, figuring out where all the personal data is and how it's being kept safe. Third is just ensuring ongoing compliance, with all the new rules around consent. And finally, they need to set up strong data governance, which might even mean hiring a dedicated data protection officer to keep an eye on everything. And that's really the whole point, isn't it? It's not enough to just know the theory. You have to be able to actually do it. The real goal here is to give people the hands-on skills to turn all these legal rules into smart, effective, and responsible data management that actually builds trust. So you might be wondering, okay, this is interesting, but who really needs to know all this stuff?
Well, let's break down why the DPDPA is almost certainly going to be important for you and your career. As you can see, the net here is incredibly wide. This isn't just for the hardcore privacy professionals or the C-suite tech leaders anymore. It's now absolutely essential for students who want to build a career in this space, and honestly, for anyone who's just curious about how their own data is being handled in this digital age.
Let's look at what's in it for everyone. If you're a privacy professional, this is your chance to become the go-to expert in your company. For lawyers, it's about specializing in a super high-demand field of tech law. If you're a business leader, this is about seeing compliance not as a burden, but as a huge competitive advantage that builds trust with your customers. And for students, this is the ground floor of a career path that is only going to get bigger.
All right, as we start to wrap this up, what are the absolute key takeaways you need to remember from our little explainer on India's new data law?
For any organization, it really all boils down to two huge outcomes. One, getting this right will give a massive boost to your reputation with customers, who are savvier about privacy than ever before. And two, of course, it strengthens your compliance, which protects you from some pretty hefty financial penalties. At the end of the day, understanding this act isn't just about following a bunch of rules. It's about having the knowledge and the tools to move through our incredibly complex digital world with confidence, with integrity, and with a real competitive edge. So, I'll just leave you with this one final thought to chew on. In a world that is so completely, fundamentally built on data, how confident are you, really, that it's being protected?